What's going on, everybody? It's Clint here from the Die Hard MMA podcast, sponsored and brought to you by Pub Sports Radio. This is the total takedown for UFC Vegas 48, and I want to start off by apologizing. Last week, there was no total takedown, and it was because I straight up forgot with that giant pay-per-view and everything going on. There was some personal life stuff happening, and then I was on the live stream with the boys. I absolutely spaced doing the total takedown, so I completely apologize that this show was not on for you last week. If it's your first time watching, we're going back over the card, and we're talking how long do we think these fights are going to last? Is there any value from a sports betting angle on the under or the over? If you want to check out my full card prediction and breakdown, stylistic matchups, all that good stuff, that's on Mondays. That's right here on Pub Sports Radio as well. First fight of the evening, we got Jesse Strader taking on Chad Ellinger. This is a bit of an interesting fight. We really need to see these guys tomorrow at the face-offs because there's a chance that Jesse Strader is just massively larger than Chad Ellinger. He's a little undersized at 135. He's a little small for the division. Jesse Strader is huge, solid muscle, but the problem is there's a gigantic experience gap. Even though Chad Ellinger is a little bit older, he's far more seasoned, and Jesse Strader got rushed to the show, rushed to the big dance a little too early, and we've seen that be a problem for him. So 5-2 taking on 11-5. You got to kind of side with the experience of a guy like Chad Ellinger. He's been tough to put away. He's been submitted a couple of times, but he has the veteran savvy, that gas tank, that experience that he turns it on to people late if they can't get him out of there early. So I think that there's a chance for finishing upside both ways here. Jesse Strader is a machine. He goes in there, he hacks down the body, he looks for those big winging hooks to the head. He's got a lot of knockouts. Again, low-level competition, so not sure he can do it at the UFC level. Chad Ellinger is the kind of guy that can withstand that type of barrage and then turn the tables on Jesse once he gasses out, something that we've seen him do. For all that size and that muscle, he doesn't tend to do well the longer the fight goes on. So what we've got is a total here set at the 2.5 round mark, and I got in early on this bad boy. They opened this thing up at minus 125 to the under 2.5. That has been smoked all the way down to minus 175. Your boy got in on that, and I want to say I got minus 135. I think I got in not quite at that opening line, but just a short little hop, skip, and a jump after. I got either minus 135 or minus 145. I'm back in violence here in this spot. I think with the time off for Jesse Strader, we're going to see leaps and bounds of improvements from this kid. I think he's got the type of that size, that physicality, the offense. I think he can beat up an old man like Chad Ellinger, who he's got that size advantage on. Pardon me, choking on my own spit here. But like I mentioned, if he doesn't quite get that finish, Chad's the type of guy that will cook him in the second and the third round. So this line being set at 2.5, I think under is definitely the way to go. Even if you missed the boat, I mean, laying the wood on fight doesn't go the distance or something like that. I think we see violence here in this first spot. Next up, Diana Bautista taking on Gloria de Paula. The total for this one is also set here at 2.5, but for some reason, I am not spotting it on my site here. So 2.5, the over is minus 225, the under is plus 190. So classic women's spot here. They're expecting this thing to go the distance. This is one of those fights that I think we might be able to find some value on the under, though, if you're feeling ballsy enough to take that shot. Diana Bautista is notorious for having low fight IQ. She comes forward, she swings for the fences, she's got volume for days, and she just tries to hurt her opponents and overwhelm them. Gloria de Paula, even though she's 5-4, she's shown some pretty slick striking herself, and she had a nice submission attempt on the Contender Series, wasn't able to actually lock it up or put it away or anything like that, but showed that she at least knows how to attack from her back if this thing were to hit the ground. I've got a feeling these women are going to want to stand and bang, or at least I did until Gloria de Paula came out saying that she's been working her grappling. That's a bit of a red flag, but it might actually help us for the under, because if she's been working really hard for 2-3 months on her wrestling, that's not going to make that big of a difference here. She's either going to put herself in a bad position being overconfident in her grappling, or she's going to be a stud and we're not going to be able to recognize what she can do on the floor because nobody saw it coming. Either way, I think that opens up finishing opportunities. We saw what happened in her last fight when she got that head kick and ground and pound TKO because it hit the floor. We've seen her attack submissions. We've seen Diana Bautista dive on top of her opponents, make bad decisions on the ground, and then also get her arm snapped off in an arm bar. So if this thing hits the floor, the chances for a finish, I think, kind of go through the roof. That under 2.5 at plus 190, I'm a little tempted on the violence here. Low-level women's MMA, arm bar from guard, the way both these women swing on the feet, like this one could get ugly, and ugly could mean a finish. Chaz Skelly taking on Mark Striegl is the next fight coming up here. And this one is interesting because it is Chaz Skelly's perceived retirement fight. We're not entirely sure. He keeps saying maybe it's my last fight, but this is a guy who's been talking about retiring forever. Maybe he wants to see how this one goes, and then he'll actually decide whether or not it's his last one after the fact. Total set at 2.5. The under, it looks like a pick'em. There's a couple spots where the under is minus 120, minus 125, but I'm seeing minus 110s and minus 115s across the board. So kind of a pick'em price tag here at the 2.5. And I would be tempted to lean on the under just because of the way Mark Striegl fights. This guy comes out like a bat out of hell. He takes people down. He's got strong wrestling. He uses a lot of muscle. He's got some serious elbows on him that he can put people away in the striking range. But he's got a terrible gas tank. And basically he goes for broke early, and then he is helpless if the fight continues on in rounds 2 and rounds 3. He gives up submissions. He's been TKO'd. Like, this is the type of guy that just can't hang on if he doesn't have that fresh gas tank. And someone like Chaz Skelly, we've seen him be dangerous in scrambles late in a fight. We've seen his cardio hold up late in a fight. And so I think there's an opportunity for Mark Striegl to batter a broken and busted, ready to retire Chaz Skelly early. And then there's also opportunity for Chaz Skelly, who can be a just absolute gangster and weather that storm and then come back and choke out a gas tank issue Mark Striegl. Now, Mark did move out to work at the MMA lab, which kind of gives me a little bit more confidence in him. You'd think the lab is the type of place where he can level up a bit. They can work on those gas tank issues. So maybe that's not exactly how this fight plays out. And with Chaz Skelly being the retirement fight, we made the mistake of diving headlong into Roxy's retirement fight, and her game plan was nowhere near what we expected it to be last time. Nothing like she usually brings to the table. So with that in my mind, clear as day, I don't have a lot of incentive to bet on this fight, but again, I would be looking violence because I think Mark Striegl early or Chaz Skelly, you know, hopefully before that 2.5 minute mark in that third round, maybe you just lay the extra little bit of chalk and doesn't go the distance at minus 140 is the safer play here in this spot. But again, I think violence. Jessica Rose Clark taking on Stephanie Egger in a fight that's got me absolutely twisted in knots. Total set at 2.5. The over is minus 225. The under is plus 170. And Jessica Rose Clark has been really leaning into her grappling lately, using that power, using that strength. Both her and Egger have pretty solid ground and pound. You know, Egger's a judo player, so we know she's got submissions. She'll have arm bars and front chokes, things like that the judo players are very used to. So there's definitely some finishing upside. But Jessica Rose Clark is really difficult to put away. I mean, even if Egger gets on top of her and starts pounding, I don't think Jessica Rose Clark is tapping or you know, quitting due to strikes for any of that. She's not that type of fighter. She will dig deep. She'll look for a leg. She'll try to reverse position. She'll try to get back up to her feet. Like, I've got a hard time seeing Egger finish Jessica Rose Clark unless it's a sub, and even then, Rose Clark's sub defense is pretty solid. On the flip side of this thing, I could see Egger getting just completely out-muscled by Jessica Rose Clark, and that late ground and pound finish when your opponent is exhausted is absolutely on the table. But either way, both of those are kind of long shots for me. I think this one's going to be a bit more of a grind, and I would be looking at that over 2.5 at minus 225, which, considering it's women's MMA, relatively reasonable price tag for doing so. You guys know me, though. Big questions, low level. Anybody could slip up and this thing could go under. I'm not parlaying minus 225 on this fight to go over or anything like that. It's one I'd probably steer clear of and just not even worry about it. David Onama taking on Gabriel Benítez. Total set at 1.5 for this one. A lot of really, really powerful opinions on this fight going either way. Over 1.5, minus 155. The under 1.5 is plus 115, plus 120, somewhere in that ballpark. And I'm kind of tempted on that over 1.5 if I'm being honest. So everybody is just jumping all over David Onama, expecting this guy to run through Gabriel Benítez. And I'm a guy that fades Gabriel Benítez on the regular. And I think that David Onama is more than capable of actually pulling that off. He's long, he's powerful, he's explosive, he's athletic. But we don't really see Gabriel Benítez get taken out early. We don't really see this man get TKO'd in the first round. He's been dropped a couple times, but he always fights his way back in, and it takes him to that second deep or that third round before he finally succumbs to that kind of punishment. And then when Gabriel Benítez wins these fights, it's guys that just don't belong in the UFC. It's guys that are smaller than him, like Janes. It's guys that he can just bully around and just picks apart until he finally puts them away. I think that David Onama is coming for war here. I think this is a spot that David Onama very well can show that he is UFC caliber. And Gabriel Benítez is really kind of fighting for his career here. This kid is in his second UFC fight, coming off an L, beating only guys that have been cut. Gabriel Benítez has really got to show something. I don't expect David Onama to go down from like a big head kick or something like that early, but I do think there's a chance that this fight gets dragged late. We know that David Onama comes from the Krause camp. So because of that, he's going to be probably grappling heavy as far as his game plan, and we all know that that forward pressure and then the exhaustion factor for Gabriel Benítez is really kind of the way that he gets beaten in these fights. So if David Onama comes in sharp, he probably is looking to grind this guy's gas tank down and finish late. Gabriel Benítez, even if he's controlling this fight, I don't know that I question Onama's chin. He got hit by some big shots in that UFC debut and didn't succumb to any of those. So maybe Gabriel Benítez outclasses him, but I don't know if he finishes him, and if he does, I don't know if he does it early. So I'm extremely tempted on this over 1.5 here. Not picking a dog in the fight, but just saying we're going to have one hell of a fight in this spot. So minus 155 or so for the over 1.5. I'm looking at that hard. That one might make my card. Mario Bautista taking on Jay Perrin. Now, Jay Perrin's coming in here on short notice, so we've got another spot where you got to really dig into your fighter, see what he looks like. Has he been training? Did he have another fight booked? Those kinds of things, and those are all the types of things that I usually like to have for you as information here on this show. Unfortunately, this is a relatively new booking, and I have not had the time to look into David Perrin. So we know Mario Bautista, we know what he brings to the table. He's long, he's explosive, he's got those flying knees. He can hurt people, but he's another one of these guys that kind of death by 1,000 paper cuts. Like, he'll hit you hard, but it usually comes deep after he sets it up, that kind of thing. So not expecting an early finish necessarily, but it all comes down to what Jay Perrin brings to the table and the game plan that he's coming with, because if he forces this into a firefight, then maybe we do get an early finish. I'm not sure. And I actually don't have a line here at this point that I'm seeing for the total. So unfortunately, I can't really do anything but speculate for you. And since I don't know a ton about Jay Perrin, I don't bring much for you there in speculation either. So I'm going to go ahead and take a straight pass here. Sorry, I was rambling while I was looking for the line so I could give you some kind of information, but it's not there for me. So apologies, but we'll skip that one. Jonathan Pearce taking on Christian Rodriguez. Another very similar situation to the last one. JSP getting a short notice replacement opponent here. Now, Christian Rodriguez is a guy that people need to not sleep on. This kid is also very legit. He was looking to be knocking on the UFC's door here very soon. 7-0, undefeated. He's got good hands. He's got good hips. He's got good takedown defense. I absolutely think he could be a UFC caliber fighter. Give him a fight or two, but he's getting jumped into the deep end here against JSP, in my opinion. Total set at 1.5. The over is minus 125. The under is even money, minus 105 in some spots. And I kind of like that over, if I'm being honest. JSP is a guy that likes to cook his opponents. He's a fight-ready kid. He comes out, he likes to strike, and then he likes to mix in those takedowns. Good timing on those level changes. And then just mauls people with his ground and pound and his chain grappling. Once he's got them exhausted, then he goes in for the finish. So he's an absolute round 2, round 3 finish type of fighter. Just the way he breaks his opponents down, destroys their will, and then takes them out. The fact that he's taking on a fighter who, you know, is coming in here on short notice is, you got to wonder about Christian Rodriguez, but from what I understand, he had another fight booked in this case, so he's not rolling off the couch. This is not a short notice fight where we're expecting him to be out of shape. He's actually gunning and ready to go here, which gives me a little faith in the over 1.5. If he's good to go, he's not a one-hitter-quitter knockout threat, and even though JSP is a little bit hittable, you got to expect it's going to take Christian Rodriguez some volume to get the job done. He's got good hips, so he can defend those takedowns a little bit. Maybe he, gets back up to his feet a couple of times. That'll extend the fight, and maybe JSP doesn't get the submission or the ground and pound TKO right away. The over 1.5 at minus 125 sounds like a pretty decent spot to me. Joaquin Buckley taking on Abdul Razak Alhassan in the car crash of the evening. Total set at 1.5. The market's a little bit split. I see some places where the over 1.5 is -125. I see some other spots where it's under juiced -125. So shop around a little bit depending on the place that you want to look. And I'd be betting violence here myself personally. You know, Joaquin Buckley, he just seems like he's a little starstruck after that last time he got knocked out. He was taking his time and managing the pace and the range, trying to stay away from his opponent, not really wanting to engage. Well, this week we're in the small cage. And this week you're going up against Abdul Razak Alhassan, a guy who is a one-rounder bust fighter and basically forces everybody into a phone booth right away in these fights. I think this one's over in 1. I mean, I have a hard time seeing Abdul Razak Alhassan winning an extended fight in this one. Maybe Buckley has sharpened up those wrestling skills. Maybe Buckley has sharpened up that fight IQ, and this thing can go a little bit later. Abdul Razak Alhassan did just switch gyms. We're expecting an emphasis, you know, on his cardio, on his game plan, working with a guy like Trevor Whitman, which is my favorite coach, and, you know, outside of Fight Ready, my absolute favorite coach in the game today. So I kind of expect Abdul Razak Alhassan 2.0 here in this spot, but we'll see what happens. This is a very interesting fight. I could see this one being over towards the middle of round 1, and if it doesn't get done by then, maybe these guys are both trying to play the long game and it sails over 1.5, making us all look dumb. Another one that I really have no interest in betting because there's so many questions around both guys, their mentality, and where they're at in their fighting careers at this point, but if I got to make a pick, and for the sake of the show I do, I'm saying under 1.5. Jim Miller taking on Nikolas Motta, welcoming this UFC Contender Series fighter to the big show. Total set at 2.5, and this is another one I moved in earlier this week. It looks like there are some -120s, -125s still poking around out there, but I see -130s and -140s starting to pop up on this one. So the under 2.5 definitely getting some love, and I am on the under myself. I got that -125. I've got 2.5 units to win 2 on this violence bet here in this spot, and this is mostly just based on how Jim Miller fights. Like, he's getting older. He's not the kind of guy who's doing the Alistar Overeem where he's protecting that chin and trying to savvy his opponents and win a decision. He really has never had the gas tank for that. So he goes for broke early in round 1 and he hurts his opponent, he puts them away, or he tends to run out of gas himself and end up scrambling life and death in round 2 and 3. Motta's coming in. He's already talked about being broke. He's going to be looking for that bonus. He's a guy with big, heavy hands, and we have seen Jim Miller rocked early on in their fights. I fully expect this thing to be a round 1 fight. I think Jim Miller is going to come out, either show that veteran level to this game, take a guy like Motta down, hurt him, get him on the floor, choke him out, or Motta's probably going to survive round 1, get to round 2, and then he's going to put those hands on Jim Miller, and I don't think Jim is going to survive 15 minutes of dealing with Motta on the feet. So definitely an under spot here. You know, UFC fresh talent. Motta's not an easy guy to finish, but Jim can sub anybody in the world, and then Miller, we know we've got questions around his durability. Absolutely, both guys can finish and be finished. -125, give it to me. Parker Porter taking on Alan Baudot in our next fight here. Total appears to be set at 1.5 for this one. Over is juiced highly. -155, -165 on that over 1.5. The under looks to be about +135 in most spots. And I'm not quite sure I agree with that. I think a lot of people, this one is one of those binary totals. I know we talked always, every single episode, we're picking totals, not fighters, but this is one where it matches. If you're going Alan Baudot, you're saying under 1.5. The way this guy comes out, the way he hits, the way he gasses, if you think he's winning this fight, he's gonna do it in the first round. If you're saying Parker Porter, then you know he's a guy that takes his time. You know he drags his opponents deep. You know he likes to piece them apart and then get working in that second and third round after surviving the early storm. Those are definitely the two game plans these guys bring to the table, and because of that, if you like Parker Porter, you're going over and laying the -155. If you like Alan Baudot, you're betting that plus number at +135 and going under for the violence. I think the only difference in this one is we know Baudot's got a bit of a problem grappling, so if Parker Porter does manage to get on top of him early, he could finish early as well, and that would help that under 1.5. So I'm definitely picking violence here in this spot. You know, full disclosure, I've got a bet on Alan Baudot. A lot of people don't like it, but I think that violence in round 1 at +200, +210, I think that's the way to go. And I do think that that under 1.5 is probably the way to go. Parker's too hittable for me. I think Baudot's going to hurt him and hurt him early. Next fight here, Kyle Daukaus taking on Jamie Pickett. Oh, you know what? One more point on Baudot and Porter, by the way. Baudot's last fight, It went under 1.5. He wrecked his opponent in round 1, but couldn't quite get him out of there, and then gassed so badly he got put away by Nascimento in about the first 20 seconds of round 2. So that's not off the table either. 1.5 rounds, you got 2 minutes and 30 seconds of that second round still to get it done. So don't forget, that's on the table for the violence bet. Kyle Daukaus taking on Jamie Pickett in the co-main event. Total set at 2.5. We've got over 2.5, minus 160, minus 175, somewhere in that ballpark, and under 2.5 for the violence bet is plus 130, plus 140-ish. And this is a spot where I am very, very, very confused. So Jamie Pickett filling in here on short notice, spotted his opportunity, looking to come in here and make a statement for himself. I'm not entirely sold on Kyle Daukaus, but the Daukaus brothers are legit. Kyle's got power in his hands. His striking really has a bit of work that he needs to do on it, but he can hit like a truck when he wants to. His ground game is solid. This guy's definitely got some subs. He's got length, he's got height, he's got reach, good frame for the division. Jamie Pickett, he's got all that too. He's got the athleticism, he's got the good frame, he's going to have like a 4-inch reach advantage here in this spot. The only problem for me is that Jamie Pickett is Sam Alvey. Now, I've gone to the well backing Jamie Pickett a couple times as an underdog. He's always underrated. He's getting better. He's a guy that's going to win us money in spots that people don't see him coming. But this isn't necessarily one that I know that he can get done. He's probably the better striker. I think he's got the, with that reach advantage, I think he's definitely got an advantage on the feet. The problem is his low volume nature. If he were to let go, he would have a big advantage on the feet. But because he's low volume and he's going to trade 1-for-1 with a guy like Kyle Daukaus, there's a chance Daukaus hits harder than he does. And that's not good for anybody. And then if you want to talk about grinding and exhausting somebody, clinching up with a guy that's a high-level BJJ black belt and can snap your arm off at any point, that's not really the greatest strategy. Daukaus can jump guillotine, Daukaus can pull guard, he can reverse the position, scramble for a takedown, Jamie Pickett doesn't have the best takedown defense. He instigates these grappling situations, but he doesn't always follow through, and he gets reversed and taken down sometimes himself. So I think Jamie Pickett's game plan kind of plays right into the hands of Kyle Daukaus. I hate to go against my guy in this kind of a spot, but I do think Kyle has the opportunity to kind of do whatever he wants here. Jamie, though, durable, likes to drag those fights deep. So if you're looking at Jamie, you're thinking over. And Kyle Daukaus, is he going to come through and buzzsaw this guy in the first round? I mean, maybe. But do we know he's going to come with that level of aggression? I'm not sure. And we know Jamie's going to try and slow the pace down unless, again, he's coming in on short notice. It might be a F it, let's drop the gloves and go for it early. This is a spot where I want nothing to do with the total. I think there's some upside on that under. We've seen both guys with some finishing ability. Jamie has been finished, even though I'm talking about him being durable. And he does hit hard. So even though Kyle Daukaus is a guy that's hard to put away, if Jamie comes out and blitzes him the way he did on the Contender Series, things get interesting. So definitely passing on this one, but I'll say over 2.5. I kind of feel like we're in for a bit of a grind. Main event time, Johnny Walker taking on Jamahal Hill. And this one I love. We got the total set at 1.5. And I can't wait to see what happens in this fight. It looks like we got 1.5 over is anywhere from minus 130 to minus 150. Again, the market's really split here. There's some spots where it's even money and plus 105, and those are getting hit. You can get plus 110 out there in a couple places. I kind of like the over in this fight, if I'm being completely honest. So Jamahal Hill, he's a volume guy. Now, when he wants to sit down and really put somebody away, he can. He's got the ability to do that, but he really is more of a pace dude. He takes over, puts the pace on you, and TKOs you after he's just left you with, nothing left to give. He keeps punching you in the face when you're exhausted and you're going 1 for 5 on shots against him. Johnny Walker, though, he's got that dangerous, explosive nature. He's got those flying knees, the spinning heel kicks. And the one thing that we kind of always seem to forget about with Johnny Walker is that the man is working on his wrestling. You go back to the Nikita Krylov fight, and he actually spent a lot of time looking for takedowns. He spent a lot of time in top position. He was trying to neutralize a guy and not really fighting in that dangerous, explosive way that we're used to seeing Johnny Walker fight in. And we're seeing this evolution from Johnny Walker. He hopped around. Now he's at SBG Ireland, so we're not really sure what to make of him. And the way he fought in the main event last time, he was super patient, way too patient against a guy like Thiago Santos. But if that's the new version of Johnny Walker, we got something to think about. Johnny Walker, and I apologize, Nikita Krylov actually took Johnny Walker down, so I misquoted there. I remember Johnny Walker having some top time for some reason in that fight. Maybe he hit a reversal. I'll need to go back and watch. I'm glad I pulled the UFC stats up here so I can correct myself, because I know the YouTube comments are definitely going to correct me. But he does have a 100% takedown rate. Anyway, Johnny Walker, I think, is probably going to look to slow the pace of this fight down, especially with a guy who's been rocked and hurt with the chin concerns we've got with him. He's probably going to be looking to trade one big shot at a time. Maybe he actually looks for the tie-up. Maybe he actually looks for the takedown. He's going to throw a lot of feints the way he did against Santos. And I do think that because of the power, you know, it's going to take Hill. He's going to have to respect that. He's going to take his time opening up here. And because of that, I think we're going to see mostly a staring contest in round 1. And if we get through round 1, you've only got about 2.5 minutes left to skate through to that round 2 and hit that over 1.5. So I'm absolutely looking at this over 1.5. And the more I sit on it, the more I really like it. And I actually think I might be betting this one. And this might be one of those crazy spots where I've done this before. Every time I talk about it, and then I don't actually have the balls to pull the trigger on it. But I talk about betting all the overs on a fight that people expect to happen round 1, especially when it's in a main event. You know, it's a title eliminator type of situation like this where everyone's thinking it's going to be violence and it's going to be violence early. But if you stack those overs, you know, you got over 1.5, lay that minus 130, and then over 2.5 plus 160, over 3.5 is plus 240, over 4.5 is plus 300. And then fight goes the distance is like plus 330, plus 350. So I think this might be one of those opportunities where if I want to sack up, I'm a little scared because I'm on a bit of a losing skid right now. So I don't know if I want to open up and risk that. But if I'm right and this fight is a slower pace and these guys take their time, you know, this could wipe out all of last week's losses in one main event sweep where I try to play these overs. And hell, if you get the first 2, you're free rolling on the second 2. So maybe I play the over ladder here in this main event. I need to do a little bit of work and dig a bit more into that, taking a look at what Johnny Walker brings to the table, listen to those fighter interviews. But the over 1.5 is probably going to make my card. I actually really like that spot. That's the total takedown, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Smash that like button for me. Hit this thing, retweet on Twitter if you're over there, and leave me a comment. Let me know what your favorite total for UFC Vegas 48 is. Good luck. Let's roll. See you tomorrow for the undefeated post-weigh-in show.